Welcome to Session Sunday. Hi guys, it's Jack Edwards, and in today's video we're going to be focusing on playing with a false 9. But before we get into this week's video, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe, and if you missed last week's video, click on the link above. Okay, now moving into the first part of this week's session, we're going to be focusing on a pattern of play which will be receiving the ball in behind to finish, using the false 9 as the focal point to play into. Now before we get into it, let's have a look at how many players we're working with this week and the equipment that we'll be using. So in terms of players for this week, we're going to have 12 outfield players plus our goalkeeper, which we can adapt for more players as well. So in terms of the equipment for this week, we're just going to be using balls, bibs, cones, and then you have poles or mannequins to use for this area here. That's perfect. And also later on when we use small-sided goals, if you don't have them, you can use poles as well as an alternative. Now, in terms of the setup for this part of the session, okay, so from the goal line to where our false 9 is going to be, they're going to start 20 yards from goal. And then the wider players who are going to be receiving the ball are going to be just a few yards behind. Okay, so the distance between this player and this player is going to be 10 yards. So you might want to cut that in the middle. And then the distance between the central players here to the very end players here is 15 yards. Okay, with just a couple of yards off here for the wide players as well. Now, these two players are going to be the distance of the goal. So you're looking about 8 yards if you're using a full-size goal. And then either side of here, you're wanting between 12 and 15 yards of width for these players, and then the wide players a little bit further back as well. So you're looking at the distance between here and here, about 20 yards, and then 8 in there. So around about 40 to 50 yards of width, but again, you just work with the area that you've got. Now we've split it into two different colours here, just so you can see where everyone's going to be working. So the ball is going to start as if it's the fullback here. It's going to get played inside, so we're trying to recycle the ball across the pitch. As soon as this midfielder receives it and opens out, okay, our striker's going to look to drop in to receive the ball. As the striker drops in to receive the ball, okay, the attack midfielder looks to pull out to receive the ball in space, and then they're going to slide the winger in behind, who looks to go in and then finish. So if you had more poles or mannequins, you can put them in here, so we're trying to find that slide rule pass in behind for the finish. Now our movements, the fullback becomes the midfielder in here. The midfielder goes to be the attacker midfielder. After that, the attacker midfielder becomes the winger. Okay, the winger becomes the false 9, and the false 9 joins the back of the queue. Now, after a set amount of time, the players can swap over and work off the opposite side. So as soon as that ball's been finished, okay, and the keeper's up and ready, we're then going to go from the opposite side. So when this player moves out here, receive on that back foot, okay? False 9, can they drop in to receive that ball? Set it out into space, so it's a dead quick combination. Time that running behind, and then look to finish. So if you had more players, you could even have players in here acting as like a defender, where they're not trying to intercept the ball, but they're trying to make it more difficult for the player on the run. So let's just use this false 9 for example, okay? So when they're timing that run, when that midfielder receives the ball, okay, they are timing the run to get in behind to receive that ball in space and finish. So again, players' movement, player who's been the false 9 goes to the back of the queue, and then these players just look to move up each time, okay, to then end up being the false 9 and into the back. So again, timing our movements, okay, our body shape to receive the ball, the ability to play first time, okay, and then making sure we're timing that movement into space and being clinical in the final third. We'll now move into our first animation before moving on to part 2 of this week's session. Okay, so moving into the second part of this week's session, we're now moving into more of an attacking based game, okay, which is going to be focusing on using the false 9, okay, to then progress forward with the attack. Now, in terms of the setup for this part of the session, okay, this area here is going to be 20 yards, the area for the false 9 is going to be 10, and then this area here is going to be 15 yards, okay, so in total, you're looking about 45 yards total depth. Now, in terms of the width, okay, this can be increased or decreased depending on the age of the players, if you want to increase the amount of players in the attacks as well. So for now, we're just going to go between 20 and 25 yards of width, just because it's going to be 2v1s and 2v2s. We don't want too much space to make it too easy for the attackers. So obviously, maybe start 25. If you think it's too big, bring it in a little bit. If you wanted to increase the size based on the numbers that you have, that's fine. So you're going to have 4 players from each team, okay, on this line here. Okay, then you're going to have 2 false nines. Now, the false nines, when one team, the other team's attacking, can try and make it difficult for each other, okay? Then you have a defender from each team as well. Now, these players can swap over after a set amount of time, okay? After a couple of repetitions, they can swap. So what'll happen is the coach will play into one of the teams to start. So let's say the coach plays into the Reds, okay? These 2 Reds will move forward with the ball, okay? And they need to play into the false nine, okay, to then continue with the attack. So when this player plays into the false nine, they can make a run into there, with this player moving on the outside, okay, to receive the ball, and then they look to drive into this area, and it goes 2v1 with the defender here. So then can they utilise the space again, play in to score? Now, once they've scored, okay, these 2 defenders look to step in here, so they will become the attackers next time round. So the coach will then play into the 2 again, the 2 attackers here again, and again they look to play into the false nine. So could be a quick bounce pass played in, and the false nine could look to spin out as if it's a realistic movement. Then these players look to come in again, okay, to make it 2v2 this time, but they can score in the goal. So again, can they look to have quick, decisive movements, okay? Look to attack the goal centrally with movements either side, and then look to finish. Now, a progression that you can do is that the first attack can be 2v1, and the second attack can be 3v2. So when the ball's in here, okay, and they play into the false nine, okay, play into the false nine there, and it's played in. False nine can then spin in, okay, this player might close down there. Then they've got a 3v2, so this player still has to stay in here, okay. Once they get the ball into this area, they've got a 3v2, okay, to then look to go in and score. Now, once the 2 attacks have finished, so if the defenders win the ball, okay, they just look to clear it either side, okay. Once the attack is finished, the defenders here swap over, okay. Obviously, we have the false nine still in here. These players go to the back, and then these players in here will then become the attackers. So then this player is now going to be the false nine. This player is going to look to stop it. So then the coach will play into the blues, okay. They look to receive it, and then the false nine might even play out into here, okay. Pull out into this area here to then receive it, okay. This player might go on the run, but then he might play it back to this player again, look to drive in, okay, create the space, and finish. Again, as soon as that's over, next player can get the ball, false nine can get themselves in to receive, play, it goes into there, these 2 red players come up to try and get in, and we look to finish. Again, there's your progression, make it a 3v2 as well. Then, after a set amount of repetitions, you could have these 2 players, okay, swapping over with somebody from this side, okay, to take turns of being the defenders. And then if you wanted to swap some of the false nines over as well, that's fine. But obviously, if you want to work with your strikers in that position, or even an attack midfielder, if that's who you're planning to use, okay, then obviously you look to keep those players in that area. We will now move into our next animation before moving on to the final part of this week's session. Now moving into part 3 of this week's session, we're now moving into a small-sided game-based scenario, which is going to be focusing on playing into the false nine to then attack. So in terms of the setup for this part of the session, okay, we're going to have 25 yards of depth in here, 10 yards of depth in here, and 20 yards of depth in here. Now, if you don't have enough space, you can just look to decrease it. So obviously here, we're having 25, 10, 20, so 55 yards in total. Okay, so if let's say you only had 50, that's fine, just bring it down by 5 yards, take a couple of yards out of each area. Then in terms of the width, we're going to start off with 25, okay, but you can look to increase that as well, depending on the numbers that you have, if you have more players. Now, the players are locked into their zone until the false nine receives it in here. Now, after a set amount of time, you can do a progression where you can remove the areas, okay, and play a normal game, and you're still looking for the same things to happen, okay? Now, this player in here is used as a bounce player, so you want this player to swap over after set time. It's because 3v3 in here, okay, when they're under pressure, they can play out, and then if they move out, there's more chance of this player playing into the false nine. Now, so it's going to start like that. So 5 reds versus 6 blues, but it's 7 blues, but it's only 6 blues in the actual game, okay? So false 9 has to receive the ball in here to attack. So if they receive it in here, we're looking to either turn and play, or receive it on the run, or turn and go forward. So once it gets played into the false 9, everyone's free to move until the ball is transitioned, going out of play. So the reds go in the back and score, the blues can go and score. Okay, so as soon as that ball goes into the false 9, it's a free game. So it'll start here, gets played in. Okay, so they're looking to manoeuvre the ball, okay, to find space to play into the false 9. So the false 9 can start in here, okay, and then when a ball comes into a player, let's say this player then drops out, okay, and then this player moves into here, or they try and follow that player there. False 9 might be able to drop in, okay, and then receive the ball in here. Now, as that happens, okay, you're looking obviously for the defenders to come into here, wingers to be ready to get in behind as well. Then you want forward runners from midfield, okay, can they support the attack? False 9 receives it, they can play out wide. This player looks to commit the defender 1v1. We look to get players in attack, the ball could get played across the box, and then we score. Which means we go back in again, let's get set up again, and then the teams look to do the same again. So for the reds in here, okay, they're looking to obviously frustrate the opposition in terms of don't let the ball come into this false 9. So what we're trying to do is move the ball quickly, okay, so use that extra player to maybe get a player to jump out, because if a player jumps out, midfielder can receive the ball, this player looks to drop in, okay, and as they drop in here, a winger might make a run in behind, and then we look to score. So now, let's say we remove the zones, okay, this player is still going to be in here. So like I say, this player can swap over. You could do it where the player can swap over at any time. So this player might bring the ball in, okay, and this player can swap out with them, okay. Now we remove the zones, okay, so these might look to drop more. They might change the shape and go 4 and 1, okay, which means it's going to be harder for us. So we're looking to keep that ball, okay, get players stretching the pitch, okay, and then again, we're trying to play into that false 9. So it's not the only way we can score now, but it's playing in. So this player looks to drop in. So when they drop in, does a centre-back come with them and leave space? Do they stay? And then it means the midfielder's got to do it, which means it leaves us more space for other midfielders. And then we can look to penetrate in that way to look to score. Okay, so this player's got to be comfortable dropping in. We're focusing on their body shape as well. So when they're dropping in, making sure that they can see where the ball's coming from, where the defender is. So when a defender comes in, if they're going to receive the ball on one side and they know the defender's going to close them down, can they look to turn that opposite way? So being aware of the surroundings, then we can go in and score. Again, when the Reds win it back, can they look to score on these 2 goals as quickly as possible? So attacking the space in behind, timing our runs, our body shape to receive the ball, being confident, playing through the lines into that false 9 and being confident to receive the ball to then go forward. We will now move into our final animation before concluding this week's session. Thanks for watching this week's video. Don't forget to head over to our website where you can sign up to view all of our exclusive content. And we'll see you next week for another Session Sunday.